Welcome to Heads Up, the ISC Research series that keeps you informed of the latest trends happening in the international schools market. Let's get started with our episode.
Welcome everybody listening in today. My name is Nalini Cook and I'm Head of Global Research at ISC Research. If you're joining us today, you're most likely interested in hearing about how to better understand and support current K-12 student pathways from an English medium international school. Now, we recently carried out some research with university and career guidance counsellors at international schools to gather some insights into the latest trends in student pathways. We wanted to know what changes have been noticed in those choices that students are making for their life after school, and what factors are influencing these decisions. Now, today I'm going to be discussing the results of this research with three representatives of international schools to better understand how supporting student pathways is changing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panel who've kindly agreed to join us today. Jolan Zhou is Head of University and Careers Counselling at Dulwich International High School, Zhuhai in China. Nia Stateva is Career Counsellor at the American English Academy in Sofia in Bulgaria. And Harriett Burrows is the Head of High School at Green School Bali in Indonesia. Thank you all for making the time for us and for joining us today to share your thoughts on the research we've done recently. I'd like to start firstly by asking each of you in turn just to give us a very quick brief overview of your school and tell us a little bit about the college counselling team who are supporting students with their future pathway plans. Harriett, if I can come to you first, please.
Hello everybody. Good evening from Bali. Yes, coming from representing Green School Bali, which is part of a family of schools now actually, and we have a Green School in New Zealand and in South Africa, and we are part of the EIN family too. But Green School Bali is an holistic education school from 3 years old all the way through to 18, and our mission statement is a community of learners making our world sustainable. And it's not just words, we really live into that with our own living curriculum, in which students aren't just working for a grade, they're working for experience, they're working for skills and values. In terms of our pathway support, I'm obviously the head of high school, but we also have a pathways counsellor, and we also have a Green School Foundation that works with our local scholars. So we're around 40 different nationalities at our school, so it's very diverse in what our students are looking for post the high school experience. Yeah, happy to be here and to meet you all.
Thanks, Harriett. Jolan, let me come to you next.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hello from China, Zhuhai. I'm the head of the counseling from Dulwich, Zhuhai. Dulwich, Zhuhai is also part of the EIN group. We are A-level international school with most of our students from mainland China. We have students from 15 years old to 18 years old, from year 10 to year 13. And nearly all of our students are looking for go overseas for university. But even though we are A-level schools, we serve students on their interests and their needs. Our value is that student comes first. Though we under UK high school education, however, our school and counseling team, but we also have a psychological counseling team, which is separate from our office.
Thanks very much. And Nia, finally to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your school and the careers or college counselling offered there?
Hello everybody from Sofia, Bulgaria. We just had our first snow here today, and it's very pretty around the American English Academy. We are a day co-educational school. We start from kindergarten through preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school. Our main program of education is the US core curriculum, and we also offer Bulgarian diploma program. Some students, all the students follow the American curriculum, but the Bulgarian students, for those speaking Bulgarian, they can also follow the Bulgarian program, which means those students graduate with 2 diplomas. Our main language of instruction is English. I work particularly with the high school students, starting in grade 8, but mostly grade 10, 11, and 12, helping them not just apply to universities, but also decide on careers, figure out what kind of careers there are in the world, what kind of things you can do with the degrees that you're looking into pursuing. And it's my third year, so I don't have that many graduates behind me, but I think that there's still a substantial number.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks very much. Well, Nia hinted there at how early one starts working with students. It's not a final exit year process when looking at future pathways. So let's start by focusing on the choices of students aged 13 to 15. We're going to be sharing some insights from our research in the slides throughout the discussion today, and I'll highlight some of those key data points for those who prefer to listen in. So although the vast majority of international students, of students attending an international school move on to senior final years, our research suggests that actually approximately 8% of 13 to 15-year-olds are making alternative choices. The most popular alternative routes mentioned in our survey include vocational training, apprenticeships, online courses, internships, and indeed gap years. So a question for our panel today to kick off is, have you noticed more 13 to 15-year-olds choosing alternatives to the traditional examinations pathway in your school? And if so, what do you think is inspiring this? Harriett, let me come to you first.
Thank you. I was grinning then because we actually don't have that traditional examination at our school. We kind of are similar to a North American institution, but like I said earlier, we have our own curriculum, and actually it goes towards a capstone. Interestingly, in our school, I think some students are seeking out some kind of standardized examination, but part of our program are things such as internships. So once a week, they can choose to go into an internship if they wish, and if they have that connection on island or even virtually. And I do think that's an important bit that's shifting, is the access to opportunities has really changed for 13 to 15-year-olds, whether that be work experience or internships or volunteerism, is that they kind of found throughout the COVID pandemic of a way to activate and be welcomed into those spaces that perhaps before felt like you had to wait till you graduate to get there. I think also that shift towards building portfolios for learners, like they really are looking for those opportunities to add that into their portfolio of who they are, which they can then use later for whatever their pathway is, but actually kind of saying yes to opportunities right now.
Thanks. It's very interesting. Nia, what's your experience here with that earlier age range of perhaps 13 to 15-year-olds and the pathways that they're taking?
To be honest, in Bulgaria, it is not possible for this age group, 13, 15 years old, to drop out of school and choose a more vocational sort of life, so to say. And by Bulgaria, I mean probably the whole region, but also I mean the international students that we have. Maybe it's just a typical thing for the region, but people here, students here, they complete the full 12 years of education. It is very rare, very unlikely that somebody is going to drop out of school.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do believe that it is a regional thing.
I think you've got similar, Jolan, right? Sorry, yeah, it's in that, because I know that you start at a later point. I think you've got 15 to 19-year-olds at your school.
Right.
So I suppose the question then is, what leads them to pursue that more formal education rather than something vocational in your circumstances?
Since I think that's the cultural background, since most of the kids are from China, so they thought after high school they must go to university and then probably postgraduate and then probably Korea. But however, like start from year 12, actually we offer some career opportunity for the students to do some, we do not call it internship because they're under 18 the age to work. So we offer them some work experience opportunity So first, we ask the kids to collect their interest on different kind of career, what kind of job they want to experience, and then we send out to the qualified group, ask them to help the intern like work opportunity, and then to match our kids to have 1 week working experience for them to have better understanding of the authentic career pathway. But so far we really have kids to drop a high school, do not finish high school, or even do not go to university for a job. We have some kids from Korea or Singapore or Taiwan, China to go for military training. However, very, very rare our kids go to work. Last year we got one kid, which is international passport holder. He had no plan for university so far, so he's one did not apply for university at all. I think he found a job in an Asia country to do some like part-time job, because his aim is like traveling around Asia like for a few years and then probably to be a chef in the future. But he is really the rare case in our situation.
It's quite rare. So how do you open if you're working in quite a traditional environment, or Nia, as you indicated, the local regulations indicate that you can't necessarily move on from formal education any earlier than 18. How do you open students' minds to what their future possibilities can be, rather than it keeping narrow to those traditional pathways? Harriett, let me loop to you again first, because I know you offer some quite alternative things at your school. How do you open students' minds to what is, to the variety of future pathways that might be out there for them?
I think there's so many different ways in which to do that. And I think it comes from also what they're learning as well, and not just thinking that in terms of context of a textbook or into an exam, but how does that apply to real life? Even with the speakers that come to visit a school, in this final week, we have an artist and activist, a climate litigation lawyer, and a National Geographic photographer. And you might have a student there who's never thought about either of those pathways, but yet they hear that talk and it inspires something in them. Our school has a big focus on activism and sustainability. And even though our students have been with us for a long time, they feel like they're really embedded in that. It's where to go with that skill set and that passion. And so I think it's sometimes showing opportunities where that passion can contribute and make impact, and how those people got there. So those stories of pathways are really important. But I think also it's building that skill of ideation. So when someone has, a young person has a passion, or they have an interest, or they show a flair in a certain space, it's about kind of looking at the variety of options that that could take. And I think also building in that opportunity of real life experience, whether in the form of internship or in terms of collaboration with a project or a capstone. I think that can really help them make the right choice for them at this moment. There's an amazing TED talk from Stanford that talks about that we have 7.5 lives. The idea that you have to pick exactly the right thing for you when you're 15, 16, 17, 18. Maybe it's the right thing for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, but opening up students to that possibility that this is just a stepping stone to something else, and then grasping that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thank you. Nia, if I come to you, again, I think we've spoken before about these alternative pathways. How do you open your students' minds to perhaps something beyond the traditional doctor, lawyer, engineer?
Well, I definitely notice the students don't have much imagination when it comes to professions, to careers, and even also to degrees. They're familiar with the main ones, and they think that if you have studied that thing, then necessarily you're working that exact thing. And the first thing that I do, the first example I give them is myself, because I'm a lawyer by education, but I am doing this student counseling right now. And the law degree definitely helps me in this case. One thing I do, something that Harriett also mentioned, I organize them guest lectures, and I'm trying to find interesting people doing inspiring work, not being part of the strict, career field, but just have much broader experience, so that students can realize that you can study one thing and then you can take it from there and move to different fields and, you know, still use your education to develop yourself and to do something meaningful and productive. I'm also using online resources whenever I can to show them how the day in the life of a certain person with a career looks like, so that they have an idea what their life is going to be like. Because our students, they're usually divided by students either whose parents are diplomats and expats, or students whose parents are business people. And by what they see at home, that's what they interpret that the profession, the working life would look like. And I'm trying to expand this view with materials, with meetings with people. Even when we have university presentations, you know, the university reps and recruiters, they share their own experience. Everything that can happen, that can help students just broaden their horizons.
Thank you. It's fantastic. Jolan, is it the same for you? I think quite often we know that students in China often take a more traditional path. Are you seeing more students seeking out alternative pathways at the moment? Is that something that you promote? And if so, how do you do that?
That's definitely something I promote, because even though I'm a Chinese, like I don't want the Chinese students to get stuck in the traditional thinking, because I think there's two ways. The first is from the inner. It's like to think independently, because normally we do not get a lot of chance since very young to think independently. We are asked to follow the crowds, to, you know, follow the community, but not to think individually. So first, I think if you think for yourself, luckily I see more and more students, they start to plan themselves based on their own needs. Like currently I got a year 12 students. Actually, his grades is very good, but he told me that he wants to now apply for a foundation like program in UK, because for the family reasons, he wants to go to UK like earlier than the other students, not to wait until year 10 to apply for university. Actually, I feel like it's a good idea because that match his personal needs. And then for the outer part is, I think as school adults, teachers, we should provide more and more opportunities, like to invite speakers, professionals, or to take them to do some working experience, to get them to get immersed with the outside society, not to only hiding or stay in the school like Ivy Tower, but to get them to get touch with the society, so they can think independently and to explore different things, and then come up with their own like customized pathway to the future.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems from all three of you are highlighting that importance of putting examples, living and breathing examples in front of your students in terms of guests coming in, people speaking to your students to highlight that diverse career opportunities. I suppose a question I would have is we're very fortunate, all three of you are working at very well-known schools, top of your field, in the places that you're located. What about those schools who perhaps don't have such a well-known reputation, who perhaps don't have years of alumni to come back and talk to their students? Any recommendations from anybody as to how you can connect with people from this diverse world of work to invite them into schools? I wonder if anyone has any comments or thoughts there for those who perhaps aren't in such an advantageous position. Nia, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I've noticed it's a problem. In Bulgarian public schools, there are no school counselors. There is nobody to actually help the students and broaden their horizons. I recently had a meeting with a girl from one of the best math schools in the city, just a family friend who was applying to university, and who shared that they're a cohort of 80 students, of whom only 2 are applying to universities in Bulgaria. All the others are applying to study abroad, and they're doing everything on their own. Absolutely no help from the students, even to the point where they have to write their own recommendations and the teachers just sign them, because the teachers do not have the English language in order to write it down. It's very hard for these students. It's very hard for them. They really have to do everything on their own. Many of them go to use some of the agencies that help with applications, but they're strictly for university applications. But here I should actually praise the teachers from the Bulgarian public schools. who are passionate and motivated enough and are able to find people whom they can also invite to speak to their students, to bring them to events, to do everything they can to broaden their ideas without this costing anything additional, because obviously public schools cannot afford it. But it is hard, and I do believe that countries all around shall consider the appointment of people like us in the public schools, because I really think that this is a necessary thing for the students. You know, if the students develop better, then the country is going to develop better in the future. It's all interconnected. So the more,
arguably, a sort of a joint approach there, where
exactly.
perhaps
So
either international or local schools can work together with international schools.
So the more a country is investing in this kind of field, the better it is for the country itself.
Yeah, thanks. Harriett, over to you.
Yeah, I think Nia talked about this a bit earlier. I think some of the best stories you can get are from teachers. You know, not everybody in the teaching team wanted to become a teacher, and they've often had different ways of getting there. So I think also it's about holding or empowering the teachers to share that story and to kind of then act as mentors to some students. I think that, you know, often you can find in any school that connection point between a student, and when they finally hear like, oh, like my teacher actually was like on his way to be a professional skateboarder, and then suddenly now he teaches me philosophy. Like, how did that happen? Those stories are really, really important in there. I saw that there was a comment there as well, also the parent community. Even if the parent community is sharing a story of struggle or a story of like, I wish I'd known this, those are all useful kind of narratives that can help the student bodies in kind of opening their minds and their eyes, and also bringing some reality to the situation.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I'm going to move us along because we don't actually have that much time, and I've realized we are already having such an interesting conversation, but I'd like to move on to talk about slightly older students, those that majority of final year students, as most of you have indicated, choose to go on to higher education, college or university, etc. Liz, if you could move the slides along for me, please, Juan. Interestingly, you should now be able to see, yep, there we go, the insights from our survey participants suggesting some shifts in university destinations. Notably, we had some students staying closer to home post-COVID and making decisions aligned with their cultural ethos, for example, staying away from political controversies or areas where they weren't happy with the local politics. And the research also suggests that those factors are increasingly prevalent when making the decision to continue to university. Nia, can I come to you? Is this what you're seeing in your school? Is it reflective of university destinations and where students are going from Sophia?
Truth be told, the COVID and recent events in Ukraine definitely have an impact over the students' decisions. Last year, I had a 12th grader who initially, when I met him and he was still 11th grade, he was completely certain he was going to the States. Last year, in the beginning of 12th grade, he said, no, miss, I'm staying here. Like, I cannot live through another lockdown, another pandemic or something happening without me being able to go back to my family. And then he said, if I'm in Europe, I can walk home, but if I'm in the States, I cannot swim the ocean. So that's why he actually decided to stay in Bulgaria. The kids are smart about it, I should say. We constantly make comments that they're nonstop on their phones and so on and so on, but sometimes they do positive stuff on their phones, and that's it. When it comes to reading the news and being familiar with different situations around the world, which do guide their choices. Our students are also triggered by Brexit, for instance, Brexit and the fact that right now tuition fees in the UK are going higher for them, and they're not liking this, and they're asking, why should I pay so much more when just 2 years ago it wasn't like this? So I'm gonna go to another university. Why should I go to the UK? They're not even in the EU anymore. So yeah, students are social minded, so to say. and they do make their choices based on smart decisions.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. What part do you think university and college rankings and league tables play in student decision making? I know we touched on this briefly when we met for a quick chat the other day. We were talking about what's more important, the ranking of a university or the subject, or is it the destination itself that's the deciding factor? I'm going to come to all of you because it was so interesting to hear from you all in the past. But Jolan, let me come to you first today. What are the prime decision-making processes of students at your school? Is it the ranking of a university? Is it the subject matter? Is it the destination?
I mean, still the number, the ranking of the university and the course affect a lot on students' decision to the university and to the country, even though we keep explaining, how you really see those numbers. Because you look at different ranking, the university can rank differently, or whether the factor to influence ranking is really something, and then we check them to really see, what does those ranking means and what's the significance for you to see those rankings. And but more and more we see the students can really see something significant beyond the ranking. For example, like the quality of the life there, student satisfaction about university, like employment rate, or about like the weather they're gonna enjoy, the weather, the life there. And because I think most of us students, they never lived or studied overseas, so they have some misunderstanding about a certain country. Sometimes they feel like this country sounds too sensitive, so I want to go to that country as well. But again, back to like probably the beginning, the question we talked about, to think independently. If they think to themselves independently and know the university well, I think they should be able to make wise decisions on the university and destination. We have counseling class to different kind of higher education system in different country, and then we talk about different universities beyond the ranking, so they can have a better choice. I can show you an example. Last year we got one student who eventually go to UBC in Canada. He transferred to us from a UK high school. I still remember when he transferred us at year 11, he came to me, have a conversation about the university pathway. He said that he really likes he really enjoys his life in UK, so he wants to go back for university. He got a lot of friends there. He was a very, very active boy, good at sports and everything, like sociable boy here. But after he applied to different university, because of the pandemic, actually we are promoting that we suggest students to apply to different countries, because in the end, probably something will affect. So he applied both to UK and Canada. He planned to go to the UK at the beginning, but later on, probably the end of year 13, he came back again, just say, probably I will choose Canada this time. I will change my mind because, this time I want to go to somewhere I don't know anybody. So away from my family and my friends, because I want a space and a country or a place where I can just explore myself. And I feel like the university in that country can offer me more opportunity than the other university, which is probably more conservative. And then this year he sent a message to me to say he really feel like he made a great decision because he learned a lot there.
Well, that's fantastic. An interesting change in motivation as well. Nia, is that similar to what you're seeing with the students at your school? Is it all about university rankings? Are they rather prioritizing subject matter or destination?
Well, I have to say that with us, it usually starts first destination, then subject, then ranking being of lowest interest. And then this changes, especially for students, excellent students who realize their potential. At some point, they start looking more into the rankings. Now, I always explain to them that rankings, they accumulate many things. And by looking into a ranking, you should be sure that this university is actually the best for you. It might be the best in the world, but it doesn't mean that it's the best for you in terms of what kind of person you are, what type of aspirations you are, and so on and so forth. The Ivy Leagues are always going to take the main positions of the rankings, but they're research-based. It's expected that you are a bookworm, you want to read a lot, that you want to focus your time on research. Most of my students are rather practically oriented. So I usually suggest, sometimes a lot, actually, Dutch universities that are very more practically oriented. But usually at some point, the students and the parents also, they always check out where the university stands in terms of ranking. But yeah, the first point is usually the destination. Last year, I had a student who came to me and he said, Miss, I want to be somewhere where there are palm trees. I know it sounds funny, but I want to be somewhere there are palm trees. And I said, okay, you want to be somewhere where it's warm. And that's, that's a valid point. That's what makes you feel good. So we actually started it from there, and we found a wonderful university, both high in the rankings, there are palm trees, there is the degree he wants to do. But it's a good first spot for research, to get it from somewhere, to see yourself where you want to live. And then when it comes to the degrees, because usually my students apply to different universities, but with the same degrees, there might changes in the names, but it's the same thing. In order to choose, I make them check carefully the information about the staff on the website of the university and Google the staff members and actually choose the best place, the best degree for them based on the staff members, the people who are going to teach them. What have these people done? And to what extent this thing that they have done can actually help the students in their future life.
Oh, that's an interesting and good for them to be aware of that. Helps open those pathways once again. Harriett, similar for you at school?
Yeah, I think the school itself has a really big role to play in this, and how you celebrate your alumni and the message that you put out into the world. So if your message is that a certain percentage of your students go to certain types of schools, then that does play on the student's mind, and that does lead to this type of competitiveness or even idea of what's good and what's not. And that can be really subtle. When I think about sharing stories from our alumni in assemblies or to our seniors, I try and mix it up. So there's students that either, have gone to certain universities, students that are doing employment or internships or traveling or doing any other kind of entrepreneurship, just so that it kind of gives that range of perspective of what is out there and where they can aim for. One thing, interestingly for us, we saw a massive shift away from America and Canada and towards Europe. Europe is now, I would say, the most popular destination for our students. And I think part of that is a real love of languages and wanting to go somewhere to build a new language, but also community. It's something that we talk a lot about with our students, is not just the course, but also does the university have a community that they feel they'd fit into, that they'd flourish in, and that they could make impact and contribute to. So, I think about one of our students, she was really into advocating for gender equality, but also against gender-based violence. And she ended up going to a school to study literacy, but then also was really active in her community around safety for women. And so I think it's finding the spaces in which they feel that they can, like I said, make an impact and contribute in some way. So that's kind of part of the conversation, but also finding the place where the course is going to be something that they show up for. They're going to get out of bed for and they're going to turn up to. So really kind of looking into that piece. But yeah, really interesting for us. We used to be very Canadian destination, and just in the past maybe 2 years that Europe has become the popular one.
There's been an interesting shift, I think, in the popularity of Europe, particularly the Netherlands. That's certainly what the research showed us, although the UK, the US and Canada are still the big three. But let's look a little bit more at subjects and what students are choosing for university. Our research showed that there is no obvious change really in the popular choices of university degrees. Business management remains the most popular, followed by various STEM subjects. Those are most definitely the most common options. Harriett, you talked there about all those added extras that surround looking at the subject to make a destination the right place for each individual student. But in terms of the subjects there and what's popular, does this align with what you're seeing at school, or is it completely different for you in terms of lived experience?
Really interesting. Just this week, having a discussion with one of our seniors who's applying for university. actually, but he doesn't really want to go because he's already part of a business in NFT connected to carbon credit. And so he's kind of looking at this and going, well, like I could apply for business school, but I'm actually like in that process right now. And I would say from our graduates who took, I'm not a big fan of the word a gap year, is what they've ended up doing is actually doing a lot of digital nomad work whilst being in Bali. So whether that be that they are doing some kind of financial work in those pieces, and then actually now they're applying for university into these courses, business and economics, so they feel that they have a grounding in it and they feel more confident going into that course. So it's interesting. I think when I look at our graduates that are looking to go straight to university, it's not those courses, but the ones that actually take a break or are already invested in a project, it would be more towards those. The number 3, engineering, for us, it's green engineering. Right. We look at like sustainability. So that's become more and more popular for our students, whether that be involved in renewable energy or in transport. So engineering is definitely a growing popularity for our graduates.
Thank you. Looking at those sort of top 5 subject choices there, Nia and Jolan, again, is it reflective of what's happening at your schools, or are there alternative subjects that you've really seen gain popularity in the last couple of years? Jolan, if I come to you first.
Yeah, sure. I think still the business related course are the most popular course among our students' choice, and then followed by the STEM, science, computer science, engineering, and math. But interestingly, communication and journalism start to become more and more popular among our students' bodies since 2 years ago. And I still remember, like probably 4 years ago, I have to explain what is communication. I have to say communication is not only about the journalism, it's everything communicating. But now students, they just, initially just say, I want to study communication. Either it's digital communication or it's like communication in studies. So I think, I don't know whether that's because the social media is flourishing area like all over the world. So those young people, they look at the journalism and communication field. They start to have an interest in that, and they feel like it's a career that they want to explore. And then this year I got another student want to study linguistics. I did linguistics for my postgraduate course because it's a mandatory course. Otherwise, I won't choose it myself. But interestingly, she wants to study linguistics. Because she feel like she probably want to be an English teacher in the future, and then she explore about linguistics.
Interesting. Thank you. Nia, how about you? Alternatives to these subjects, or is this really what everybody's focusing on at your school?
Definitely the first spot is taken by business and management, which in our school also goes together with economics and finance. They're kind of interrelated. Psychology for sure. Science, the same subjects are not really popular at our school. We are more with the humanitarian orientation. But very similar to what Jolan said, communication is very popular, especially among the girls, be it digital media and communications, be it journalism, be it creative writing. Students find it to be a very diverse degree that can offer them different opportunities afterwards. And they also are looking at the universities and the subjects that are offered, the subjects part of the degree, and they like what they are about to study. And also subjects such as, politics, international relations, they're also getting some kind of a popularity. And a little bit of computer science. Especially for we talked before about the 13 to 15 years old. This is the middle school part. They're very interested in computer science.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you. Thanks all of you. Moving on to our final slide. Looking at popular alternatives. Now, as we know, not everybody goes on to a university degree. There are some alternatives that are becoming increasingly popular. Certainly things like taking a gap year or a year of life. I picked that up from Harriett. I love that phrase. Thank you. Looking at internships, travel, work experience, that type of thing. One of the things that our survey responses highlighted was there seems to be a shift in the increased popularity of online courses these days. And I wondered if any of you had students who had gone on to pursue alternative pathways, either things like online courses or something perhaps a little bit different from the norm that you'd be happy to share with us today, and perhaps what led them to take that decision. Jolan, could I come to you first?
Normally, our students will not have a plan for a life year. They just something happens, so they have to have a life year. But I think I do observe that for those students, like accidentally have a life year, they learned a lot, they grow a lot. Some of them, they probably do arm training, or some of them traveling around the country, and then they see the society, and then they think to themselves, because, you know, we are a UK high school, you know, everybody wear the same uniform, everybody follow the same like rules. They really do not have a lot of chance really to think to themselves, to be different, to be special. So I do see some of them take a life year to grow and to be themselves. And then I also see students to take a gap year because the personal health issues. I do have a student who went for university for the first year. He feel highly depressed, and then very, very much pressure because all the university students that were very, very hard. Like he got lost because, you know, except for studying, he feel like he lost his life. So he took a gap year, the second year of his university, and then to come back to Zhuhai to do some internship because he feel like he need to really to see the world, to see the job market. He was studying finance. He feel like probably the society or the real working experience can teach him more than the knowledge he learned from the class. And then travel, sometimes I see students to travel, and online course, probably the 3 years ago when the pandemic happened in the beginning, we have some students to go to do some online course because of pandemic overseas the situation.
Nia, I think you've certainly had some students who have chosen or certainly want to pursue alternative pathways because of the experiences of what they're doing at the moment, perhaps in things like we were talking about cryptocurrency and social media, that type of thing. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. First, just a quick note, gap years are not really popular in our school, country-wise as well. Not among the parents, not really among the students. They ask about it, they want to know about it, but then they think that it's they're going to lose the momentum of studying if they have to start, you know, university after 1 year. Now, a lot of my students are interested into business, and they're looking for a way through which they can follow a university degree but still work at the same time. This year I had a graduate, last academic year, I had a graduate who was working in his parents' business since he's been 15 years old. And he wanted to keep on working. That was his main focus, but he realized the importance of having education. So he chose a university here in Sofia where he can study business, but an online degree. It's only distance. He doesn't need to be at the university. Everything is happening online, and that was his choice. Two of his classmates chose the same degree, full-time as a regular student, but again, doing business for the sake of, at the same time, working in their parents' companies. But this topic about the cryptocurrencies is something that really interests me because the whole idea of cryptocurrencies, I think it's really bugging the minds of the students, and they're reaching the point where they think that if they start investing now, they wouldn't need to study and they wouldn't need to work later in life. And I appreciate the interest they have in something that's such a novelty for all of us, but they don't understand the market behind it. And one of them, he actually told me, Miss, why should I study? You know, I'm investing in crypto and I'm earning some money. And I tell him, you need to study because you need to learn how to keep this money. And then I made him open up the website of the school and find me the spot where it says that the school is going to teach you to make money or to make you some money, or whether it is that the school is giving you education that from then on you use in order to make yourself the money you want to make. So I am, to be honest, a bit worried because at school they have me and I can try and give them a piece of some mind, but I'm not sure whether this is the case for all the other students around the country that are thinking that a few investments are going to make them rich and they'll never have to study and work in their lives.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, isn't it? I would like to ask you all just to, if you could give me just 10, 20 seconds of the kind of issues, challenges, opportunities that you're going to be watching for in the coming 3, 4, 5 years for your students in terms of pathways beyond K through 12 education. If there's anything particular that you're aware of or you're anticipating coming up, if I could ask you all just to give me a quick fire answer. Harriett, if I come to you first, please.
Yeah, I think it's for young people to continue to find ways to contribute to the planet and to the humanity for a better future. And so it's finding those opportunities and helping bridge the gap between like the overwhelm of seeing what the future might hold for them and them actually leading a change to a more equitable and positive future for everyone on the planet.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Jolan, to you, what are you watching out for? What kinds of things do you think your students will be anticipating in the next few years?
I just hope like whatever pathway all of my students going to take in the future, I hopefully those pathways can benefit my students for long-term run, not only for them to get the degree, not only for them to learn some knowledge, because knowledge is probably what turn out to be wrong in the future. I want those pathway or experience to be significant for your life.
Okay, thank you. So we've got contributions to the earth, we've got that long-term vision and looking at perhaps a little bit beyond the world of work. And Nia, your thoughts?
I will be focusing on 2 things. First is all the students I have who have parents with businesses behind them. I want these students to realize that they still need to choose their own pathway. You might have a business behind it. It doesn't mean that you need to do this. I want them to open their minds and be ready to actually do something on their own. And the other thing would be for me to stress on the importance of education and knowledge as being the only thing that stays. Everything happens. You might lose your home, your family, your money, your pets, your friends, everything. But what you have learned, it always stays in your mind. At the end of the day, this is the only thing that remains.
Thank you. So that vision beyond perhaps traditional parental expectations and the value of education. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to all 3 of my panelists. It's been a really insightful discussion. I'm only sorry we could probably easily run for another hour. There's been a lot of good practice shared. Plenty of conversations still to be had around these emerging trends and perhaps the future of pathways for our students in international schools. Please feel free to reach out to myself or to any of our panelists if you have any further questions or would like to chat anything through further. I think we're all available on social media. Thank you again for listening in, and to my panelists. Until the next time, thank you.
For more information about Heads Up, including access to previous episodes, please visit iscforschools.com/headsup. Until next time.